Hello and welcome to our webinar, Must Read Mysteries. I'm Annie Bostrom, Adult Books Associate Editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Links to today's slides and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download these materials at any time by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Sarah Porter, editor at Severn House, Juliet Grames, associate publisher at Soho Press, Lisa Daly, director of marketing and publicity at Oceanview Publishing, and Kathy Sexton and Dontaná McPherson-Joseph, collection management librarians at Oak Park Public Library. First, we'll hear from Sarah Porter. Sarah did an MA in publishing and started her career with editorial and sales roles at Headline and Penguin UK before moving to Severn House in 2011. A Yorkshire lass, she loves soccer, discovering new bands, and trying to design and make her own clothes, often with disastrous consequences. Welcome, Sarah. The floor is yours.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here and to be able to take you through some of our upcoming titles for fall. I'm going to start off with Limelight by Gray and Hurley. Okay, and this is the new Enora Anderson thriller, which sees Enora trying to work out what's happened to her friend when she disappears, and she uncovers a number of startling secrets on the way. Limelight centres around how characters behave when they're forced to make impossible decisions. These dilemmas draw you into the story, and the impact of the decisions that are made in this book are felt far beyond the quiet town of Budleigh Salterton in Devon on the south coast, which is actually where the author lives. And he knows his setting like the back of his hand, and he creates a really strong sense of an English coastal town and its community within a tightly written mystery. Moving on to Bad Timing by Nick Oldham, another thriller, the new Henry Christie. Henry is technically retired, but unable to stay out of trouble. And this is full of dramatic, action-packed scenes. If you like thrillers that move at full throttle and don't ease up, this is definitely one for you. The pace is relentless, and it sees Henry pushed to his very limits once again as he tries to track down a merciless killer. It can be read as a standalone, but it picks up where the previous book, Wildfire, finished, with Henry finding himself drawn back to the farm and back into the game when he discovers a body on a fishing trip up on the moors. If you enjoy this one, I would definitely recommend reading Wildfire as well. The author, Nick Oldham, was once a police officer himself, and he has more than 20 years experience in the police force, which brings a realistic and hard-hitting edge to his writing. The next one is Suspicious Minds by David Mark, a psychological thriller that features love, secrets, and murder in a compelling and chilling way. It's taut, creepy, and addictive, but what sets this book apart from David's other books is the main character, Liz. We see events unfold from her point of view, and because she suffers from borderline personality disorder, she finds it difficult to trust her instincts. Is what her gut telling her real, or is it part of her mental illness? And then because we see things from her perspective, we don't know the truth either, which adds an extra layer of tension to the story. But it's also a really vivid and sympathetic portrayal of mental illness. And while Liz isn't always likable, she's always captivating. We think readers will find themselves having a vested interest in her, and this is partly what keeps you turning the pages throughout. And the next one is Death Comes Hot by Michael Jecks, a gripping Tudor mystery set in London in 1556. One of the city's most feared executioners reckons Jack Blackjack owes him a favour and wants him to find his long-lost son. This leads Jack into another energetic adventure and a series of scrapes where his life is on the line. Jack is the star of this series. He's an anti-hero, not really someone you'd want to have on your side. He's immoral, light-fingered, and cowardly, but somehow also strangely likeable, and Jecks makes sure that the joke is always on him. This series is full of humour as well as twists and turns, and is ideal for those who love light-hearted Tudor mysteries. Moving on to The Outcast Girls by Alys Clare. This is the second in the new Wallsend Mystery Bureau series from the author of the Alphen series. And while the historical setting is different, like Clare in the Alphen series, Lily, owner of the Wallsend agency, is a strong, competent sleuth, and both women have a connection to medicine and healing. Clare is a healer, and Lily is a former nurse. In The Outcast Girls, she goes undercover as a school nurse, briefly taking up her former job once again as she tries to find out why girls are going missing from a boarding school. We think this is a captivating new series, and fans of the Alphen series will especially enjoy it. And now we have The FABERGÉ Secrets. This is a historical mystery from the author of The Paris Architect and a new author for Severn House. It paints a very vivid, moving picture of Jewish life in Russia during 1903. Full of sumptuous historical detail, it brings the Russian court to life with all of its glamour and corruption, from the dresses and the jewels to the intimate affairs, the opera visits and the balls. And we think readers will become completely immersed in this compelling mystery. Next, we have Scott on the Rocks, another new author for Severn House and another great addition to our list. This is the third in the Lexi Campbell mystery series. The first two entries won the Lefty Awards for Best Humorous Mystery. And if you think Sting stood out as an Englishman in New York, maybe we should take a minute to imagine a divorced Scottish woman in California, living in a houseboat at the back of a motel. There are some genuinely funny moments of slapstick and cultural confusion as Lexi tries to figure out who would want to kidnap a bronze statue, or indeed her ex-husband's new wife. Laugh aloud, twisty, and the perfect escapism from the current world. We're really excited to be publishing it. Next, we have Inherit the Shoes by E.J. Copperman. Again, another brilliant escapist read for mystery lovers during lockdown, and the first in a new series from E.J. Copperman featuring lawyer Sandy Moss, who gets mixed up in a celebrity murder case in LA with very hilarious consequences. It's a larger-than-life mystery with car chases, drive-by shootings, explosions, and sexy TV stars, all against the glamorous LA backdrop. It's rare that a male author can really nail a female point of view, but Sandy is warm, sarcastic, witty, and full of life, and we think readers will adore her. Next is One for the Road by Mary Ellis. Another new series. This is the first in an intoxicated new cozy mystery series set in Kentucky's Bourbon Country by Mary Ellis, featuring travel writer Jill Curtis. Jill is stuck in a rut at work and hoping that if she writes a piece about tourism in Bourbon Country, it will help her with her dream of becoming an investigative reporter, which doesn't quite go to plan when she discovers a body at one of the distilleries. This is a really warm-hearted cozy, mixing romance and mystery really nicely, and Jill is an endearing new heroine. Moving on to Guilt at the Garage. Just to give some background, the Feverin series is set in a fictional, well-heeled village of Feverin, full of dry wit and witty observations. Much of the humour is down to the series sleuths, Carol and Jude. Carol is uptight, while Jude is laid back, and she goes with a gut instinct. So it's a very fascinating, entertaining pairing, and here we see them in action in Guilt at the Garage, which starts with Carol's car unfortunately being vandalised. Much of the fun in this entry comes from uptight Carol's involvement in the masculine, dirt-encrusted world of a garage workshop, where she is definitely a fish out of water. Next, we have Cruel as the Grave by Cynthia Harrod-Eagles. This begins with the murder of a personal fitness trainer, and is an enjoyable romp through the sweat-soaked, testosterone-fueled gyms of Kensington and Notting Hill in London, as we are plunged headlong into the self-absorbed world of dedicated gym bunnies and fitness fanatics. Typical of the series, this book is characterised by Cynthia's brilliantly observed characters, trademark witty puns and clever wordplay, which makes it hugely funny as well as suspenseful. Also underpinning the book is a relationship between the stoic DCI Bill Slider and his bookish colleague D.S. Atherton, as they pursue their investigation with a keen sense of irony and wry good humour. And then I'm just going to very, very quickly gloss over the next ones. So The Shapeshifter's Lair by Peter Tremaine. It's perfect for fans of the Sister Familiar series. It's the 31st entry, which is slightly hard to believe, but it's a critically acclaimed series, the Celtic mystery series. It's extremely well reviewed, and we're really pleased with publishing it in America. And then Collision Course by Matt Hilton. The key question here is, could you walk away from a young woman in trouble? That's what Tess and Poe have to face up to, and they decide, of course, no, they won't. Matt Hilton is the master at creating tension, but this series is also about loyalty and a moral code, all of which come to the fore in Collision Course. And then also The Rough Cut, a tense courtroom thriller from Douglas Corleone. Very pleased to be publishing this one. And also, finally, The Murder Inc. by Betty Heckman, hilarious new mystery featuring a charming amateur sleuth and writer for hire, Veronica Blackstone. And that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, we'll hear from Juliet Grames. Juliet has spent the last decade at Soho Press, where she is associate publisher and curator of the Soho Crime imprint. Take it away, Juliet.
Hi, everybody. I am so excited to talk to you about Soho's crime list. I'm actually going to start with a few titles that are already published that just came out this fall. But if you could go to the first slide, please, for me. I don't know if you know that, so Soho Press, our crime list is best known as international and multicultural crime fiction. And back in our very, very early days, we discovered a debut writer named Jacqueline Winspear, who wrote the multi-New York Times best-selling Maisie Dobbs series. And we were very fortunate to publish the first two books in this series, Maisie Dobbs and Birds of a Feather. And we're just so proud of our long relationship with Jackie, which has now gone on for almost 20 years. Of course, she ended up moving on to big houses with big dollars, and we are so happy with her success for her whole series. But when she said that she wanted to commit to writing a sort of tell-all memoir about her own childhood and her parents' histories in the Kentish countryside in England, a three-generation family history that comes from between World War I and World War II, and then follows Jackie up through her teen years growing up on a hops and apple farm. She came back to us at Soho and asked if we would publish it because this was her original home for Maisie Dobbs. So obviously we at Soho are totally over the moon to be having this memoir come out in November. It is obviously not a crime novel, but we know that you know and love Jackie for her crime fiction. So we just wanted to make sure that all of your patrons know about this amazing book. It is so warm and witty and full of the kind of history and uplift that you have come to know and love in the Maisie Dobbs series. But it also tells some really resonant truths about what life was like between the wars in the middle of the century in England, and especially about kind of that blue collar hardship that so many in our parents' generation struggled through in order to give us all of the wealth and abundance that we have today. And Jackie just has done this incredible homage to her grandparents' generation and what they suffered during World War I. Her parents, who have this fantastic love story, meeting during World War II, not being able to find an apartment or a house in London because of the Blitz, and then ending up living with a caravan of Romany gypsies for the early years of their marriage. It's just an incredible tell-all. You're going to love it. And please just don't miss this one, no matter what. We can go into the crime list now. Thank you. So I'm also happy to have Stuart Neville, another one of our really beloved house authors, back with us with this short story collection, The Traveler and Other Stories. You may remember Stuart's Ghost of Belfast, his debut, now 10 years old. We published it in 2010, and it won the LA Times Book Prize and just about every other crime fiction prize available. Now, Stuart is pretty close to a household name. You know him for writing about Northern Ireland and all of its chilling modern history, but also for the warm heart at the center of all of his stories. This short story collection, which is his first ever, includes both stories with familiar characters from his Belfast books, who you'll know and recognize, people like Jerry Fagan and Jack Lennon. It also features standalone short stories that are creepy, perfect for Halloween, a lot of ghost stories and Irish lore, and finally, an exclusive novella that answers the question of what happened to the Traveller, the arch-villain that you may remember from his second novel, Collusion. So for fans of Stuart Neville, for fans of Irish noir, and for anyone looking for a spooky Halloween read, please check out The Traveller, out now. The next book on the list is actually two books. I have to tell you about Peter Lovesey's 50th anniversary. So you know Peter Lovesey, the Grandmaster of Mystery. He's both a Mystery Writers of America Grandmaster and also a Crime Writers Association of England Diamond Dagger winner. There are only other two living authors who have both of those distinctions. They are Sarah Paretsky and John Le Carré. So Peter Lovesey is just the best. We, in celebration of having his entire oeuvre here with us at Soho, in addition to The Finisher, which is a new book that came out this summer in his series set in Bath featuring Peter Diamond, we have also reissued Wobble to Death, which you see here in its beautiful, on the left, hardcover package. This is the 50th anniversary of his debut novel. Wobble to Death is a story set in Victorian England about a race walk called the Wobble. Peter published it because he won a first novel contest through Macmillan in the UK, and this was launched a career that now extends over 40 novels, and which we are so lucky to have been a part of. So Peter has celebrated with us by letting us reissue this collectible, gorgeous edition of Wobble to Death, which is a perfect discovery point for readers, for your patrons, especially if they like historical mysteries or traditional, or it's not quite cozy, but it's really a fun, well-plotted historical mystery. And of course, they should also know about the Peter Diamond books and The Finisher. And in addition, I will mention here, Peter's also sponsored a first novel contest himself. Soho will be announcing the winner that he picked of hundreds and hundreds of submissions on December 1st, and we will be publishing the book that Peter edited and acquired for us in the spring of 2022. So that's something to look forward to. But yes, help us celebrate the 50 years of our Grandmaster, Peter Lovesey. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Opium Prince is a debut by Jasmine Amack, who is a really exciting new writer. Jasmine is a foreign policy specialist who has worked for both US and other governments abroad as an advisor on military strategy, environment. I mean, she is incredibly well-schooled. She's now a professor in some of the most complicated truths of our modern world. This book, however, is about the complicated truths of Afghanistan, the country where her father was from. Jasmine, who is half Afghani and half German, has written a story set in the 70s about an American man who ends up having to go to Afghanistan, working for a government in an effort to prevent opium transport and export, and who ends up getting in a little bit of a jam there. This is unlike any other mystery novel it's really a thriller. I would describe it as a thriller that captures both history and also a lot of the elements of our current political forum and our relationship with Afghanistan, the roots of that complicated relationship depicted here. I think that, as you can see, we have a starred Booklist review. The pre-pubs are all coming in starred. We really think that Jasmine is a writer to watch. She's so smart and warm and interesting to read. So please do check out The Opium Prince. Next up, I have Sleep Well, My Lady. Quay Quardy is one of the best proceduralists I have ever read. We have been at Soho honored to publish 5 books of his and have recently launched this new series, the Emma John series, which is set in Ghana. This is the second book following The Missing American, which came out this year and has to all kinds of critical acclaim. But Quay himself is Ghanaian born, half Ghanaian and half American. He is a medical doctor in Pasadena who took up writing about 10 years ago in a passionate way to reconnect to both his the Ghana of his past that he was forced to leave when he was 19, and also with his desire to create literature, which he's done for us so beautifully. He's got this really wonderful protagonist, Emma John, a private investigator who was basically lost her position on the police force and has a lot of her own demons that chase her throughout the books, but they are seriously beautiful procedurals, full of atmosphere, full of food details. You are going to want to go to Ghana after you read these books. Next slide, please. Mick Herron. I'm like, do I need to introduce Mick Herron? We're here in his 10th anniversary year. You can see the inset, Slow Horses. It is the 10th anniversary since we published Slow Horses, one of our bestsellers of all time. And as a capstone to this incredible series, Mick is bringing us Slough House, the eponymous. Slough House is the department of MI5 in London where failed spies are demoted to. And each book in this incredible series, so prescient, so laugh out loud funny, so stirring, is basically a crisis happens in MI5 that the Slow Horses, as they're known, have to fix in order to save the world. Please do not miss Slough House. Don't miss Mick Herron. Check out this new deluxe edition in the inset of the paperback. If your patrons are looking for total addiction, they should start with Slow Horses. We have such high matriculation rate with this series. People who buy book 1, buy book 2, and they buy book 3, and you have this whole beautiful oeuvre in front of you. So yes, Mick Herron, huge crowd pleaser. Next one, please. Vading Station is a return of David Downing, one of our best sellers in the past, who has not published a World War II thriller with us in many years. The Station series, which started with Zoo Station, we thought had concluded. He'd written 6 books in it. They're all set in Germany. They feature an Anglo-American journalist/spy. And like I said, some of our best reviewed and best-selling books of all time. Vading Station is a prequel set in 1933. It starts at the burning of the Reichstag, and it introduces this beloved hero, John Russell, and it launches his story. So please check this out. It's a perfect entry point as both a prequel and for your people who are already fans of this series. Next, please. I'm going to conclude with Lady Joker. This is not the cover. This is our placeholder cover. This is one of the most complicated books that I've ever had the privilege to edit and publish. It is a translation of a magnum opus in Japanese. Kaoru Takamura is one of Japan's most famous female crime writers. She's one of the most famous writers in Japan. She's won almost every literary award, but her books are long and really, really heady. She's like sort of a David Foster Wallace character as a writer in terms of all of the many kaleidoscopic viewpoints that she ties into her stories, her deep knowledge of politics and pockets of history. And she is just a really heady reading experience. Lady Joker is actually inspired by a true story, the kidnapping of the president of Glico Morinaga, which happened in the 1980s and which just rocked Japan. It was such a huge scandal. The crime was never solved. And so when she wrote this magnum opus in 1997, it's the story of 5 disaffected Japanese men, each from a different walk of life. There's a mechanic, there's a guy, a failed detective, there's a journalist who's struggling, there's a banker who's got a lot of malaise because he's an ethnic Korean and has been from the Zainichi group, who has been experiences so much prejudice every day. And these 5 men decide that they're going to take out their frustrations about the way Japan has ignored them and has failed to support their needs and interests by kidnapping a corporate, the president of a corporate company, and sticking it to them. A core secret of this book has to do with the suppression of the Burakumin community, which are known as the untouchable or segregated caste in Japan. The government has long overlooked. It's got all kinds of interesting identity conversations and it really calls into question corporate culture and the entirety of the second half of modern Japanese history. This is for really serious readers, Japanophiles, and for people who like really noir stories that are epic in scope. I believe that's the last of my titles. So I just wanted to say thank you for attending and listening, and please let me know if I can get you galleys of any of the books I talked about today, or if you'd like more information. It was a lot of titles in a short period of time, so thank you again.
Thank you so much, Juliet. We'll now hear from Lisa Daly. Lisa Daly is a writing coach, best-selling author of dating advice and women's fiction, and frequent media guest who has done more than 3,000 interviews. She's the on-air relationships editor on Daytime, a nationally syndicated TV show, and has a popular writing advice channel on YouTube. Lisa is the director of publicity and marketing for Oceanview Publishing, a publisher of mysteries, thrillers, and suspense. Take it away, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me today. I have my book list, my to be read list has just expanded massively after listening to these amazing presentations. So thanks to you guys. I'm really excited about what you have coming out. So Oceanview, all we publish is mystery, thriller, and suspense. And if you could go to the next slide, please. We published over 200 titles, 14 titles a year since 2006. And I'm super excited to present to you some of our brand new titles that we are really incredibly excited about. Next slide, and the slide after that, please. Okay, fantastic. So our first title that I would like to present to you is The Girl Who Wasn't There. Now, this book is by Vincent Zandri. If you are a fan of Gone Girl, intense psychological thrillers, books that are twisty and you won't be able to figure out what's going to happen next, this is definitely a title that you want to pick up. It's really intense. It's got a really fast pace, and I will say, like, review after review after review, we get, twisty, didn't expect it, like over and over and over again. That's sort of the theme. What you should know about Vincent Zandri: he is a New York Times, an Amazon, and a USA Today bestselling author. He has written more than 40 novels and novellas and sold over 500,000 books worldwide. He's also an ITW Thriller Award, Shamus Award winner, and a Derringer Award nominee. This book actually just came out last week. The main character, Sidney O'Keefe, he just wants to spend a peaceful weekend alone with his wife and his daughter in Lake Placid, New York, because he has just been paroled after spending 10 years in a maximum security prison. But any illusion he has of a peaceful future is completely kaput when his 11-year-old daughter, Chloe, suddenly disappears from the beach, leaving Sidney and his wife, Penny, completely panicked and freaked out with no idea what to do. Fairly quickly, Sidney determines that it is his old crime boss who may be behind the abduction, and it becomes really apparent that the past has not only come back to haunt Sidney, but it's come back to kill his whole family. Vincent is really, his books are so twisty. He is a fascinating, interesting guy. He is actually a freelance photojournalist, and as I said, multiple award winner, and has hit pretty much every bestseller list there is. This book just came out in hardcover last week on the 13th of October. The ebook actually was released a little early in June, which we did sort of in response to the pandemic, but our the big release has actually been in the last week. The book is available in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. And I know you guys will get our contact information after this webinar is over. And if you are interested in reading an arc or a galley of The Girl Who Wasn't There, just shoot me a message and I will be happy to accommodate. All right, next slide, please. Oh, I love this book. Our next title is The Well of Ice by Andrea Carter. She is a fantastic writer. This is the third book in the award-winning Inisherin series. I'm probably saying that wrong. She keeps telling me, and I keep writing it down phonetically, and I mess it up every time. She's Irish. Her character is Irish, and if you love Agatha Christie or traditional mysteries with awesome female protagonists and those sort of quirky, fun characters, this is definitely a book you will enjoy. She is often compared to Louise Penny. Really, really cool story. Basically, what happens is Benedicta, who goes by Ben, is working before the Christmas holidays. And while she's on a trip to Dublin to visit her parents, she runs into Luke Kirby, who happens to be the man who killed her sister. And he has just gotten out of jail. And when they meet up, he seems like he's remorseful. He seems conciliatory, but he says something as she's walking away that makes her, realize that he is as evil as he's ever been. Then she goes back to her hometown, and things have gotten chaotic. The Oak Pub has burned down, the barmaid's missing, and a body is found lying face down in the snow. And Ben has to find out who could possibly be behind this vicious attack. And as she digs in to find some answers, she comes face to face with the reality that all this evil swirling around her could really be about not only her present, but her future. Andrea has a fantastic bio. She's really interesting. I don't know if I told you guys this. This series is actually in production for a BBC television series, which is really cool. I think that's going to be fantastic. And these books are hugely popular in the UK, and we are honored to be publishing them here in the US. And she actually has a really fantastic I almost said crime base, fan base. It's so funny, as I was sending this out to reviewers, I was so even though she's not super well known in the US, there's so many people who said, oh my gosh, I read her last one. I love her. I love her. So this is definitely a great book club book. And if you have not read her and you love those Louise Penny, Agatha Christie type mysteries, you will definitely love this one. Andrea herself has a pretty interesting bio. She was actually a barrister before turning to write crime novels. She's based in Ireland. Grew up there and studied law at Trinity College in Dublin, also worked as a solicitor there. But she also holds an MFA in creative writing from University College in Dublin. Her first book, Death at Whitewater Church, was one of the winners of the Irish Writers Centre Novel Fair, and she has been the recipient of 2 Arts Council of Ireland Literature Bursary Awards and a number of other awards. This is the 3rd book in the series, and she is a terrific writer. I cannot recommend her enough. All right, next slide, please. Blind Vigil by Matt Coyle. This is our big book of the year. Matt Coyle is an incredible author, and if you have not read him, you need to. You're really missing out. This book is on sale December 1st. Matt is one of those guys who is really just writer's writer. We used to call him the Susan Lucci of the Lefty Awards. He was he was a finalist for the Lefty, I think 7 years in a row, 6 or 7 years in a row, and finally he won it last year for the previous book in this series, Lost Tomorrows. He also he also won a number of other awards for this. He won the Seamus for this as well. He has, I think, more Seamus, Anthony, and Lefty Award nominations than any mystery writer I have ever met. And he's a heck of a guy. I know if some of you are familiar with what happened at the Lefty Awards last year, it was happening right at the time when, you know, when everybody in the US was starting to shut down for the pandemic. And Matt was the Toastmaster. And so he felt like he really should stay. But all these authors are canceling at the last minute. It really was kind of the first weekend of the shutdown. And all these authors were canceling at the last minute. And Matt is running around like a crazy person, sitting on one panel after another, after another, after another. So he's a really a fantastic guy. Heck of a writer. This is the 7th in the award-winning Rick Cahill PI crime series. And what's fascinating about this is that Rick Cahill is a really interesting protagonist. He's blind. And there's a lot of, I would say, humanity and integrity in this character. He's often compared to Michael Connelly's Bosch and John Sanford's Lucas Davenport. He's gotten some fantastic reviews from Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, Booklist, and many other trade and fan magazines. And what happens in this book is that Rick, you know, he's been blinded by a gunshot wound to his face 9 months previously. And he'd basically given up on his private investigator job. And he's sort of trying to figure out who he is in this new sightless life that he has, when, shock of all shocks, his past comes back to find him in the form of a friend who needs his help on a simple case she's taken for one of his old friends. And he does agree to help. And of course, the case goes from being sort of a simple favor to being deadly in 24 hours. And Rick has to find the truth, but he's also questioning the motives of his friends and trying to figure out what he's capable of, you know, without his sight, while this killer lurks in the darkness. Matt has known that he wanted to be a crime writer since he was 14 years old, and his dad gave him The Simple Art of Murder by Raymond Chandler. His debut novel, Yesterday's Echo, won the Anthony Award for Best First Novel, and a ton of other awards. He's a terrific author, and this is the Rick Cahill crime series is just a terrific book. It's just a terrific series. So I hope if there's only one book you pick up today, it should be this one. And again, if you want to read it, send me a note and I will be happy to send you an ARC or a galley. All right, next, please. All right, next we have Death of a Messenger by Robert McCaw. This is a prequel to the Koa Kane series, which takes place in Hawaii. The first two books were Off the Grid and Fire and Vengeance. His series has received a starred review in Booklist, glowing Kirkus reviews, and this is a really interesting character. He's got this tragic past. And if you love Hawaii, this is really, it's a mystery wrapped in a love letter to Hawaii. You have a ritual murder on the Army's live fire training area that throws Chief Detective Koa Kane, our cop with his own secret criminal past, into a race against time to figure out who the victim is and of course who the killer is. And this story takes you all over, from these untouched royal burial vaults to these massive telescopes, to volcanoes, ancient rituals, cultural conflicts, secrets. This is really just a fascinating story, and Kane races to discover whether the victim has just stumbled on a gang of these high-tech archaeological thieves, or learned a secret that's basically so shocking it cost him his life. And of course, our hero is working around the clock to stop this killer before he strikes again. About the author, Robert McCaw grew up in a military family. He's traveled all over the world. He's a graduate of Georgetown, was in the Army, earned a law degree from University of Virginia, and was a partner in a major firm in DC and New York. And he has lived on the big island of Hawaii for 20 years and clearly loves it there. It comes through on every page. All right, next slide, please. So next I have The Ruthless by David Putnam. David Putnam is one of those fantastic authors you've never heard of. And this is the 8th in the Bruno Johnson mystery series. And he's never like he builds this audience, builds, but he's one of those guys that's going to break out. He's actually my mother's favorite author. He's one of these guys that's going to just break out in a big way, but he hasn't quite hit it yet. And we've gotten such good reviews and such great feedback on this book, The Ruthless. So we think maybe this might be the one. He's gotten some incredible blurbs. Lee Goldberg just raved about it. If you are a fan of Robert Cray or Michael Connolly, who both happen to be fans of David Putnam, you are definitely going to want to read this series. I love this series. Bruno is big and tough. He's got this teddy bear heart, and he is a detective with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. He excels at handling violent crimes, but he struggles to hold his family together. And he makes some tough choices when he's out in the Los Angeles streets. There really is no limit to how far he'll go, but then the unthinkable happens, and everything in his life changes. There's so much realism in this series, and in particular in this book, and the reason for that is that Putnam, who did hit the best-selling list, I think, for the collection, comes from a family of law enforcement professionals, always wanted to be a cop, and basically has worked every job in law enforcement. He was in narcotics, he worked on the FBI violent crimes team, he was a US Marshal, he pursuing bank robbers in Arizona and California. He was on the SWAT team, criminal intelligence, internal affairs. And when he lived in Hawaii, he was actually a member of the real life Hawaii Five-0, which is kind of cool. Anyway, The Ruthless is the 8th in the Bruno Johnson series. And this is actually one of the young Bruno prequels. And it's a fantastic book. All right, next slide, please. All right. So Fatal Intent is a medical thriller by Dr. Tammy Juliano. She is a debut novelist. If you like Tess Gerritsen and Robin Cook, you are definitely going to be interested in this book. She's a practicing anesthesiologist. And this book is about some elderly patients who keep dying at home a few days after minor surgery. And our main character, anesthesiologist Dr. Kate Downey, wants to know why. And so she starts investigating, which ends up threatening her family, her job, her life. And this book just escalates. And eventually she has to choose whether she wants to save or let go of one of her family members in order to see this through. She's a pretty interesting person. Tammy Juliano, like I said, is a practicing anesthesiologist. She's gotten some incredible blurbs coming in which we're super excited about. And she's also a tenured professor of anesthesiology at the University of Florida. As I mentioned, Fatal Intent is her debut novel. All right, next slide, please. I love this book. Okay, so this book Endings has an incredibly strong female protagonist, like super strong. If you love Dexter, if you love the girl with the dragon tattoo, this is a book that you definitely want to pick up. Linda Richards is an award-winning author of 15 novels. If you've ever been to a writing conference, you have definitely met her, because she is one of those writers who is always there. And I love this story. So this woman, our main character, has just experienced this horrifying personal tragedy, and out of the wreckage of her life ends up becoming a contract killer. And she's really good at it. And she's sort of going along this way until she comes across this serial killer who is so horrible that she vows that she's going to track and kill him. So she's propelled by vengeance. She's really starting to, question who she was, in her previous life and who she is now. And it's a really well-written book, but I love, love, love the premise. And it is one of those fantastic escapist novels. And Linda Richards is just a heck of a writer. All right, my last book is Beyond the Headlines by R.G. Belsky. This is the fourth in the award-winning Clare Carlson mystery series. Belsky is this is a guy who has this incredible career as a journalist. He was an editor at the New York Post, at the New York Daily News, at Star Magazine. He worked for NBC News when he was, back in the 70s. He was tracking serial killers, including Son of Sam, as a beat reporter. His previous title, Below the Fold, which is the one that came before this one, was a gold winner of the Forward Indies for Best Mystery. He's a terrific writer, really fun writer. And his books are just perfect for fans of Harlan Coben, Robert Cray. And if you love Hank Phillippi Ryan, and I do, you will definitely love Belsky's books. So in this particular book, we have Clare Carlson, who is our main character. She is a TV journalist, and she's doing an emotional jailhouse interview about for a couple where the woman is a mega celebrity, the man is a billionaire businessman, and they're this power couple that had everything until Charles is found dead and Laurie is charged with his murder. And so Claire does this interview that actually helps to win Laurie's release from prison. But soon there are more murders, more victims, more questions, and Claire finds herself plunged into this baffling mystery that basically stretches back 50 years. So Belsky is a really interesting guy. He's a terrific writer, and this is a really wonderful series. And all of these books work really well as standalones. But if you are a fan of Hank Phillippi Ryan, you definitely want to pick this series up. So thank you all so much for your time today. Again, if there's any of the books that I mentioned today, if you're interested in an ARC or galley, just reach out.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Our final panelists today will be Kathy Sexton and Dontaná McPherson-Joseph. Kathy is a collection management librarian who loves reading, sharing, and talking about books. Her missions in life are to create communities of readers, convince folks that her official title should be book pusher, and refute that disco is a dirty word. And Dontaná is a collection management librarian who was born with an unending reading list. She's almost always reading 2 books simultaneously and is easily distracted by cool covers. Thank you for joining us today, Kathy and Dontaná. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. So we're here to talk about some trends that we've been seeing in mysteries. And so we've seen a few of these today, but I think it's safe to say that the PI novel has never really gone away, but it had shifted a lot towards the amateur sleuths, like those that you'll find in cozies and even journalists and people like that. But after starting out slow with just a few a year from established series, more and more I've been noticing a return to the original kind of PI novel with actual licensed PIs, private eyes. So first up, we have Skin Deep by Sung Jae Woo. Siobhan O'Brien is a Korean-American adoptee, and her boss, Ed Baker of the Ed Baker Investigative Agency, has just died and left the business to her. Her first solo case is from an old friend's sister. Josie Sykes's adopted Korean daughter, Penny, has gone missing from her college campus. To investigate, Siobhan enrolls in the college's program for older students and learns that there is a dark underbelly to the seemingly idyllic campus in the woods. Wu does a good job of exploring identity, adoption, and the beauty industry while solving the case of the missing young woman. Skin Deep is out now from Agora Books. Remember My Face by John Lantigua is the first Willie Cuesta novel in almost 10 years. Willie is vacationing on the beach when he gets a call from an immigration lawyer. Ernesto Perez hasn't been heard from in 3 months. He's an undocumented worker as a farmhand and regularly sends money home to his family in Mexico, but his family starts to worry when he doesn't send any for a while. So Willie heads to Central Florida, where the agricultural business is booming, migrant workers are available, and there's a disturbingly heavily armed anti-government militia. Willie soon discovers that Ernesto is not the only undocumented worker to go missing in recent months. Are they dead? Is it drugs? Is it a setup? Relevant and timely, this one is a good place to start for new series fans, and it is out now from Arte Publico Press. Winter Counts by David Heska Wanbley Waden. Virgil Wounded Horse is the enforcer on the Rosebud Indian Reservation in South Dakota. He's the guy they call when tribal justice and the American legal system fail. Heroin has found a foothold on the res, and someone is just determined enough to hire Virgil to root it out. When Virgil's nephew starts using, the job becomes personal. In addition to finding the supply and trying to take care of his nephew, Virgil must contend with constant bullying for being mixed, Lakota, and white, and the need to reconcile his past and present behavior and methods. Winter Counts is a sharp look at the struggles that Native Americans still face today with respect to legal barriers, identity, and the creation and destruction of society. This one is out now from Echo Press, and though Virgil is more vigilante than PI, I just couldn't leave him out. Next slide, please. The Unspoken by Ian K. Smith is the first in a new series, and it follows Ash Kane, former detective with the Chicago Police Department. He goes private and is set up quite nicely after a wrongful termination suit is decided in his favor. His first case is of the missing Tinsley Garrigan. Her wealthy parents hire him to find her, but when her boyfriend turns up murdered, Kane worries that he won't find Tinsley alive. There's tension, high society bigwigs, and a few run-ins with Kane's former colleagues and bosses. This one is also out now from Thomas and Mercer. Fortune Favors the Dead is the debut from Stephen Spotswood, and it follows Willow Jean, also known as Will Parker, a runaway turned Jill of all trades with a traveling circus, and her new boss, Lillian Pentecost, a licensed private eye with multiple sclerosis. In 1948, New York City, Lillian hires Will to be her assistant after Will saves her life, and on one of their more high-profile cases, which is the basis of this novel, is the locked room murder mystery of Abigail Collins on the night of her Halloween party in the same room, same chair even, where her husband took his life the year before. There's speculation that his spirit murdered Abigail, but Lillian and Will know better. Definitely the lightest of the bunch, this book is practically unputdownable and filled with old-time slang. This one is out next Tuesday, October 27th from Doubleday. And lastly, the one that I'm most excited about, The Conjure Man Dies by Rudolph Fisher. This was originally published in 1932 during the Harlem Renaissance, but it is known as the first detective novel written by a Black author. Ngana Frimbo, the titular conjure man, is found dead in his consultation room. Perry Dart, one of only 10 Black detectives in Harlem, is sent to investigate. Along with Dr. Archer from the practice across the street, Dart works to solve a case that seems to defy logic. They turn to Frimbo's last client, Jinx Jenkins, and his friend Bubba Brown, but are they really helping or just trying to cover their tracks? This one comes out in January 19th from Collins Crime. And over to Kathy.
Hey everybody. So I'm gonna move a little bit away from our traditional mysteries and move on to some thrillers and some trends we've been seeing in thrillers. And I want to start with this great question that Meg Gardner talks about when trying to find thrillers back in the day, which is, does the book have a helicopter on the cover? It must be a thriller. But thrillers have really changed, and we probably all know that domestic thriller is having a moment and is not going anywhere anytime soon. They've definitely found their audience. So the first one, just out last week, comes from the author of Perfect Mother, Amy Malloy, and she's back with Goodnight Beautiful about newlyweds Sam and Annie. Sam is a therapist who happens to see mostly women patients in an office located in their home. Annie discovers she can hear the sessions through the grate and thinks it's all harmless until Sam disappears. There is so much buzz about this title, and Library Journal already gave it a starred review saying Malloy employs some of the most believable and jaw-dropping narrative twists since none other than Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl. The next one, The Push, is coming out in January by Ashley Adrien. And this is what I like to call a new mini subgenre of domestic thrillers we're seeing, which I call My Child Freaks Me Out, but probably nicer, Publishers Weekly called it Bad Seed Suspense. So Blythe Connor is discovering that motherhood is nothing like she expected. Her daughter Violet is not like other children, and Blythe is convinced something is wrong, while her husband thinks it's in her head. Thanks, husband. But when their second child arrives and Blythe feels all the feeling and connections that she expected with Violet, things take a dark turn. It's got a starred review in Publishers Weekly, and it's gotten blurbs from everyone, including Kristen Hanna to Bill Clegg. And then Mother May I by Jocelyn Jackson, which you have to wait until April for. It's another motherhood book, and similar to Jackson's previous Never Have I Ever, a mysterious, scary stranger shows up and everything becomes terrible. Amy Way's ordinary life becomes a terror after a witch-like woman begins appearing and her young son disappears while just feet away from Amy. I personally love this thriller pivot that Jackson has made and really look forward to more. So one of the things I really love about domestic thrillers is that they make awesome book discussion titles. They often explore some traditional themes of favorite book discussion books like family, relationships, and secrets, but also happen to be suspenseful, sometimes scary page turners. It can be a really great shakeup for your discussion. So moving on to our next slide, and our next trend is thrillers with supernatural and horror elements. I feel like we're seeing more and more of this genre crossing. And the first one, I'm not going to talk about too much. We don't have a lot of time, and I know you've all probably already heard of When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. Totally anxiety-inducing, yet also thoughtful. It addresses the issues of gentrification and race, plus it has elements of horror and romance. And while Alyssa Cole is very well known for romance, I think this could change now. The Hole by Hiroko Oyamada was released 2 weeks ago here, but was previously released in Japan in 2013 and won the coveted Akutagawa Literary Prize. Newly relocated to a rural area because of her husband's job, Asa tries to fill her days exploring her surroundings. One day she sees a strange creature, which she follows and proceeds to fall in a hole that seems perfectly made for her. And that is only the beginning of the strange occurrences. I think this is a good pick for folks who like weird and surreal. and that cover really oogs me out. I know it's just fur, but for some reason it really gets to me. Upstairs House by Julia Fine comes out in February and is yet another thriller incorporating motherhood. New mom Megan is alone while her husband travels, exhausted and mentally drained and unable to complete her dissertation on mid-century children's literature. Now she believes that the ghost of Margaret Wise Brown, yes, as in Goodnight Moon, is her upstairs neighbor. So here's what I really love about these thrillers. They're all written by women, starring women. I'm pretty sure that wasn't the case when readers would just search for a helicopter on the cover to find their next thrilling read. And we're almost out of time, but I'm going to do one last quick slide because I am a true crime fanatic and they are vaguely related to mysteries, right? And the trend I really see there is this combo of true crime and memoir. And it's not necessarily a memoir because you were related to somebody that had a crime happen to them or that it happened to you, but it's, you know, Michelle McNamara's I'll Be Gone in the Dark, that you have become obsessed with it. So the one I've been hearing about for months and I'm really excited to read is We Keep the Dead Close by Becky Cooper, which is coming out in just a couple of weeks, I think, in November. Cooper's an undergrad at Harvard when she hears the story of James Britton, a grad student in Harvard's anthropology department, who was found bludgeoned to death in her apartment in 1969. She ends up delving into this case for the next 10 years, an obsessive search for justice. And finally, released earlier this year, I want to bring attention to Yellow Bird, Oil Murder and a Woman's Search for Justice in Indian Country by Sierra Crane Murdoch, which is also the story of Lisa Yellowbird and her deep dive into the disappearance of a white oil worker from a work site located on the reservation. While there is a crime, this is really a portrait of a fascinating, complex woman dealing with her own demons. So thanks for indulging me in true crime. And I think I went a minute over, sorry.
Thank you so much, Kathy and Dontaná. And another huge thank you to all today's wonderful panelists. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. If you haven't already, be sure to check out Booklist Reader, where Booklist contributors post daily about all things books and library land. And if you aren't yet a subscriber, pair the page-by-page reading experience of print with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com and lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this special webinar offer to get Booklist for only $75. And thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. And one more thank you to our panelists and our sponsors, Severn House, Soho Press, Oceanview Publishing. This concludes today's webinar.